The next speaker is Aideen Kennedy. So Aideen works in Ireland and is going to discuss various aspects of the ELISA test.
It's not a presentation. Is there a different presentation now? Not mine.
Sorry, is the wrong presentation coming up?
Yeah. That's great, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. The title of my presentation is a comparative study investigating the interference of the SICCT on map ELISA diagnostics in a herd both pre and post the removal of a clinical case of Johne's disease. This study is being conducted as part of my PhD, which I'm currently doing in Teagasc Moor Park in Cork and CIT. As we're all aware, mycobacteria are a major cause of infectious diseases worldwide. Of interest is Mycobacterium bovis, the causative agent of bovine TB. A commonly used method to identify animals infected with M. bovis is the intradermal skin test, and this involves the administration of purified protein derivative, or PPD. And depending on what region you reside in, this might involve the administration of bovine PPD on its own, or in other countries it's combined with avian PPD, and this is known as the Single Intradermal Cervical Comparative Test, or SICCT, which we'll refer to as the TB test or skin test from now on. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the process, avian PPD is injected on top and bovine PPD is injected below. The vet takes repeat skin thickness measurements at 72 hours, and an animal infected with M. bovis records a skin thickness at 4 millimeters greater at the bovine site than the avian site. In Ireland, we operate a comprehensive TB eradication program, with all bovines over 6 weeks of age being subjected to a minimum of 1 test per year. As we're all aware, MAP is the causative agent of Johne's disease, and commonly used methods to diagnose animals infected with MAP include ELISA, PCR, and culture. However, no test for Johne's disease reports perfect test sensitivity or test specificity. However, ELISA testing often forms the test method of choice for a herd-based diagnosis due to its speed and cost relative to the other diagnostic methods. However, it has previously been reported that skin testing interferes with MAP ELISA diagnostics, and with this in mind, it was our aim to investigate the interference of the skin test with MAP ELISA diagnostics both before and after the removal of a clinical case of Johne's. Our hypothesis being that in a seronegative herd, the skin test would interfere less with our ELISA diagnostics, leading to a more rapid return to pre-TB test levels. So a 139-cow spring calving dairy herd was recruited to the study. This herd was located in Munster in Ireland and operated off a grass-based system. The herd consisted of 54% Frisian, and the remainder were made up of Jersey or Jersey crosses. The study was initiated in May 2012 and continued until the end of 2014 and involved monthly serum sampling. For the purposes of this study, I'm going to focus on 2 test periods, around the skin test in 2012 and the skin test in 2014. To give you a bit of background about the herd Johne's history, prior to 2012, no fecal culture and no clinical case had been identified on the farm. However, in May 2013, a single fecal culture positive cow was identified. The graph gives you an example of the herd MAP ELISA prevalence throughout the study from May 2012 until just before we administered the skin test in 2014. You can see that when we culled our culture-positive cow in July 2013, she was showing the signs of classical Johne's disease of a thickened and corrugated gut. In winter of 2013, we culled a number of ELISA positives, and prior to the administration of the skin test in 2014, the herd was recording a fully ELISA negative status for 4 months. Further details of the control program that were in place in this herd are available on our poster that we have currently hanging in the Liffey Hall. So our materials and methods, serum sampling frequency increased both before and after the TB test period. In 2012, you can see we had multiple test dates following the administration of the skin test. In 2014, excluding day 71, we matched our sample time points to within 10 days of the original test dates. The test kit we used was the ID vet kit, and our study was licensed by the Department of Health and Children. Now, all the results from the 2012 element of this study are published in Frontiers in Immunology, so I would refer you to that for further in-depth details on materials and methods and results. However, in brief, our statistical analysis was conducted on STATA. We analysed our results as both continuous and categorical variables. Any animal recording an SP ratio greater than 70 was categorised as positive. We analysed our results using multivariable generalised estimating equations, and we included the independent variables of sampling time point, breed, and parity in all models. To analyse the differences between 2012 and 2014, we used t-tests and Mann-Whitney tests. So moving on to our results. You can see in blue our results from 2012 are shown. Prior to the administration of the skin test, shown here in green, less than 10% of the herd was testing MAP ELISA positive. However, following the administration of the skin test, there was an increase in the prevalence of MAP ELISA positives. This peaked at just under 40% of the herd testing MAP ELISA positive at day 9, and this decreased thereafter until by the end of the testing period in 2012, our herd was recording a similar number of MAP ELISA positives as our pre-test levels. In 2014, as I mentioned previously, the entire herd was testing ELISA negative before the administration of the skin test. However, once again, following the skin test, there was an increase in the prevalence of MAP ELISA positives. This peaked at 30% of the herd testing MAP ELISA positive on day 10. This decreased sequentially thereafter until day 91, when the entire herd was testing ELISA negative once again. So moving on to box plots of our MAP-SP ratios in both 2012 and 2014, you can see that in both test years, in 2012 when the herd was seropositive and 2014 when it was seronegative, that following the administration of the skin test, there was an increase in the MAP-SP ratios in both test years. However, in 2014, there appears to be a more rapid and uniform decrease in the number of MAP ELISA positives. At the moment, we are unsure whether our post-TB test increase in MAP positive animals is due to decreased test specificity or improved test sensitivity. At the moment, we feel that the results may be due to a decreased specificity. However, further research would be necessary to confirm this. When we analyze the results statistically, we can see that in 2012, our results were no longer statistically significant by day 71. However, when the herd was seronegative, the results were no longer statistically different by day 57, and this represents about a 14-day sooner return to pre-test levels. However, it should be noted that although the results were no longer statistically significant at day 57, there were still a number of animals recording an SP ratio greater than 70, and therefore these animals were categorized as positive under manufacturer recommendations. So we feel these results are most important to a herd with an ELISA negative status. It is important that these herds don't take samples for MAP ELISA diagnostics too soon post the administration of the skin test, or they could potentially run the risk of identifying false ELISA positives. It wasn't until day 91 when the entire herd was recording ELISA negative status once again. So at the beginning of this study, it was our aim to investigate the interference of the skin test on our MAP ELISA diagnostics, both before and after the removal of a clinical case. And we hypothesized that there will be less interference in the ELISA results in a seronegative herd, leading to a more rapid decrease to the pre-test levels. So we can conclude from the study that the skin test is associated with an increased prevalence of MAP ELISA positives in both a seronegative and seropositive herd, and it is associated with an increase in MAP antibody titer. Our results are no longer statistically significant in a seropositive herd by day 71, and in a seronegative herd, the results are no longer statistically different by day 57. However, as I did mention, caution needs to be exerted, especially in a MAP ELISA negative herd, as our ELISA negative status was only restored at day 91. And finally, just to show you how this study is leading on to future research, many of you might be aware that intradermal skin testing has been used to identify animals subclinically infected with MAP, and commonly avian PPD or Yonan are used, but the comparative skin test has also been used, with researchers reporting that MAP-infected animals will react at both PPD administration sites, but with greater intensity at the avian site. So as part of the skin test, skin thickness measurements are taken at 0 hours and 72 hours, and the increase in skin thickness is a manifestation of a delayed type hypersensitivity response. So we want to investigate whether this delayed type hypersensitivity or the lumps that you see at TB testing, whether there is an association between these lumps and an increase in MAP ELISA response, and thereby potentially identify further research areas to aid MAP diagnosis and control. And we plan on presenting these results at future conferences. But for now, that's it. If anyone has any questions, I will be happy to take them. And I'd just like to conclude by thanking my PhD supervisors and the staff on the farm that made this study possible.
Thank you very much, Aideen. Do we have any questions for Aideen? This is a really important area of work for practically on the ground.
Hi, Jim Crilly, ex-Chagas, ex-Moore Park. We've been following the culture-positive MAP cattle in Munster for 27 years. And the picture hasn't got any fuzzier. As the disease spreads, and it's like the Americans or the other countries, we should have a lot more MAP herds out there than we do. Is it possible that our intensive TB scheme since 1960s has been controlling the spread of MAP? Have we been pulling out animals under the TB scheme that's reducing the level of MAP that we should be getting?
I think that's entirely possible. In the way that the skin test there can be interference both ways. You can falsely identify MAP-positive animals with the skin test. Equally, you can identify with the skin test or MAP-positive animals can give a false positive reaction on the skin test for TB. So therefore, we could easily be pulling out MAP-positive animals with the level of TB testing that we do in Ireland.
Are there any further questions?
Yes, may I have another question? Nisa Ribeiro from Portugal. Would it be possible, first question is, why did you not choose a negative MAP herd to perform that test you have made? Because I wonder whether your testing scheme would disprove a claim saying that by using avian tuberculin previous to the use of ELISA test would boost ELISA response and would enable us to pick more MAP slightly infected animals. Do you think that your scheme could disprove this affirmation?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Is it why?
First question, why didn't you pick a negative herd, a negative MAP herd to do that?
I guess we chose the herd because it being the same herd, we had at two different time points. It had an ELISA positive and ELISA negative study period. Oftentimes when you're conducting testing in Ireland, you're not going to know prior to the administration of the test whether the herd is positive or negative. The point of the testing of this study was to see if removing a clinical ionised case would be make differences in the results. So therefore, that's why we chose this specific herd. Plus, we had plenty of data on it, so we were able to follow it over a prolonged period of time.
Yeah. Then this is my second question is because we know that ELISA tests for ionis they have a pretty good specificity. However, they are very bad in sensitivity. My question is that if you can say that if we use this avian tuberculin before doing the sero testing, does not enable us to better detect, does not improve our specificity of the ELISA, instead of causing false positives?
Again, I don't have the answers to whether it improves test sensitivity or possibly it does, and it would be interesting maybe to follow these animals to see if they go culture positive in the future. And it is something we're interested in looking at. We're going to look at interferon gamma responses from these cows that peak in the post-TB test period and see perhaps it is increasing our way of finding these subclinically infected cows, but at the moment we don't have the answers to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, though.
Are there any further questions for Aideen? If not, then thank you very much, Aideen. Thank you.